If you're anything like me, you're probably saying to yourself, wow, that looks easy, except how am I going to remember all those dang magical words? There's so many of them. How am I going to keep them all straight? Well, it turns out that Excel has a button that'll make it so that you don't need to remember them by yourself. If you do remember them, they're easy to use. But if you don't, you can look right here, and it's called the Paste Function button. Now, on XP, it's right here. It's this F with this little X. However, on earlier versions, this FX used to be up here somewhere. So if you don't find it right here, if you have an earlier version, look for this FX up over here. Let me click on the FX. Now, when you do that, you get this categories brought up. Usually it says that. But if I click here, I can get all sorts of categories of different functions. This is the most recently used functions. This is all functions, financial functions, math and trig functions. Here's the one we want, is statistical. Now, if you have an older version of Excel, older than XP, your box will look a little different than this. Instead of having this pulled down category, you'll have all these categories on the left side and these categories on the right side. But it works the same way other than that. It's just a design change. So I'm going to click here on statistical, and here are all the different kinds of statistical arguments that there are. And if I click on one, it tells me what it does. If I click on count blank, it says counts a number of empty cells in a specified range of cells. If I click on another one, deviation squares, returns the sum of the squares of deviations of data points from their sample mean. So it tells you what that happens if you use that magic word. Now let's say that I want to do the standard deviation of the population. Well, I'm going to try and guess what that looks like. Or I could type in a description here and it'll find it for me. But that's only on XP or later versions. On earlier versions, we don't have this nice search function. So let me just guess that standard deviation would start with an S. And here's some. If I click on here, it says estimates the standard deviation based on a sample. Well, I want it based on a population, so I'm going to guess it's this one. Calculate standard deviation based on the entire population given as arguments. That's the one I want. Now, if I click OK, up comes a box, a dialog box. And what I need to do here is I need to put in where my data range, where the data points are that I want it calculated on. So I put in my B2 colon B10 right here. And then it'll tell me the answer here. When I hit OK, it'll paste it in the box I want. Let me show you another thing I could do. Instead of using this, I could click on this little thing right here. It's got a red dot in it. If I click on that, then I can highlight the data, say B2 all the way down to B10, and it puts the data range in right here for me. Then when I click this, it's put it in for me. Now, in later versions like XP, you don't even need to hit that thing on the right. You could just go down here and highlight, and it'll put it in for you. So you can do it either by manually typing or by doing your drag, your highlighting of the data, and it has these marching ants around it. And then I press, and I should get exactly the same answer. So you don't need this fantastic memory. All you need to remember is, if you don't remember, click this FX, and it'll help you find the magic word. Sometimes, though, we'll have data that has more than one argument. Here's an example of one that would be that case. Let me use this FX one. Let's go down to quartiles would be a good example. Let me go to quartiles. Quartile is a multi-argument one because we have to say which quartile we want. Do we want the first quartile, the second quartile, or the third quartile? So here I'll click on quartile. I'll say OK. And it'll ask me for the array, that is, where's the data, B2 colon B10, and then which quartile do I want. By the way, when I click in here, it tells you, it says quartile is a number, minimum value for here is 0, first quartile put a 1, median value put 2, third quartile put 3, maximum value. So let's say I want the first quartile, so I'll put a 1. And then I hit enter, and there, my first quartile in this case is the number 2. That's a multi. Let me show you how that looks. Well, actually, I can click on it. This is what I type. I put an equal sign, the word quartile, a left parenthesis, B2, colon, B10, comma, and then I tell it the second argument, which is what quartile I want. Let me do that for the third quartile. Equals quartile, left parenthesis, B2, colon, B10, comma. I want the third quartile, so I put a 3. I press that, and I hit enter. Now, it turns out that some very complicated, I've never used them, but I understand that some arguments some function arguments, not statistical, but some other function can require up to 30 arguments. Now, that may seem like a lot, but my mother-in-law can have more than 30 arguments before she has her morning coffee. So in that perspective, it's not a lot of arguments, but to me it would be. But this is what I wanted to show you this lesson, is how to use these statistical functions. They're so easy, and they make life really easy for you if you'll just learn how to use some of these statistical functions. The next thing we'll learn is a tool that does statistics for us even easier than the functions when it comes to more complicated problems. It's a tool, a data analysis tool, and we'll learn about that in the next lesson.